Hey folks, hacking this and that back again. This time we're going to do, actually I'm going to slow things down a little and I'm going to get into some diagnostic. Now I won't get offended if you choose to hit the settings gear down there and bump the speed up to 1.5 or 2x normal playback speed. I do that for a lot of other people, trust me. But I want to sort of walk through this and some of the steps I take. In troubleshooting things. So, if you haven't figured it out, I spend a fair bit of time on Discord, usually in the console sensor usage, sensor dev channels, trying to help people out. And I see a lot of people struggling, and I hate being that guy who comes along and says, "Hey, it's working fine for me." But really, I do spend a lot of time in there. I do spend a lot of time with devices, if you haven't figured that out. And often I'm not running into these problems. So here are some of the tips and tricks that I use when I'm trying to work through a problem. The first one I want to do is address the console um, and the spinning blue dots of login. Um, in my normal 9 to 5 job, I run a software development team. I know the struggles of building web applications and trusting that you, the user, have your drivers up to date, your security settings properly, your antivirus isn't over tweaked, and your browser is working fine, and trying to run an application in a browser. They are a great tool, but they are a tool. So one of the things that I have found when I do get that sort of little spinning 4 dots is, and this is where I'm going to favor Firefox over Chrome. I normally use Chrome. I've been using Firefox more and more lately. But Firefox has this really cool feature. And I say it's really cool. I'm sure it exists in Chrome. You just have to do 15 steps to do it. But if you want to tell Firefox to forget everything it knows about console, all you have to do is click on your menu, come into your history, and find the last entry for console, right click on it, and say, forget about this site. That will flush everything Firefox is hanging on to that is related to console and hopefully Magic Link. Now, Magic Link is a third-party application. It's kind of like using Google Auth, but instead of using Google Auth directly in console, they go through Magic. Magic then lets you use Google Auth if you happen to be using Google Auth. So in the event that you also seem to have issues with the authentication of Magic Link, do the same trick. How to do it in Chrome? Sorry guys, I'm gonna say either switch to Firefox and try it on Firefox, or do some digging and you'll find it eventually. But this is one of the things that I have got to give props to Firefox for when it comes to clearing crap associated with browser history, cache data, all that crap that makes those login sessions just not work right. So that's tip number one. How to get into Chrome, or sorry, how to get into console when you just can't seem to log in. Next, I want to talk about some of the devices. And if you haven't figured out, I'm a huge fan of Dragino devices. I have them in my personal collection. I have them in my business collection. I have them in projects I do for other people. They are a great device at a great price point. So I'm sorry to everybody who's gone with a different brand. Eventually, I'll get my hands on. Actually, I'm going to pause for a brief moment. I was actually looking at the MileSite product the other day, and specifically these EM300s. They're a little more pricey, I think, than the Dragino, but I do like some things about them. And when you consider that you're getting NFC connectivity to the device, a little extra is not a huge price tag to go in order to connect to the device and manage the device. Obviously, Dragino, if you buy the older LHT65, sends you this wonderful little cable. And this is great, but the best analogy I can come with is if you're going to tinker with your sensors, you need the right tools. It's like being an engine mechanic and not having a ODB2 diagnostic tool. You're just flying blind. You can do a lot of things with downlink. You cannot easily get good diagnostic information out of your sensors. So, what do you need? The one thing I have been recommending people grab, and I just want to make sure I'm not tangled up here, is a TTL adapter. You can get these on Amazon. They are dirt cheap. I think the one I've been referring people to the last couple days goes for about $20. And on it, you, depending on your device you get, all you really care about is that ground, TX, and RX pin, and that is going to make life a whole lot easier so that you can actually connect to your devices. Now I'm just going to quickly try to ram these back on here because I pulled them off. Yep, okay. And the other thing you're going to want to do is grab some DuPont jumper cables. That's going to let you connect from your adapter to the little connector on your cable. If all you have is LHT65s, you can repin this and make it fit. It's a hack. I'm good at them. But if you're going to work with any other device, you're going to want some jumpers. Now, here's where things get a little ugly. The more sensors you play with, same manufacturer, multiple manufacturers, the more things that you like this that you're going to end up collecting. Now, the LHT65, these come with them. The newer LHT65N doesn't, and it requires a USB-C interface. Now, because I buy a lot of stuff from Dragino, I was able to order their little USB-C breakout board thing. It's documented in the user manual. You can probably find these on Amazon, like this one. I'm not going to give you any guarantee of its usability. You're going to have to do a little trial and error trying to find the right pins. I can tell you that looking at this particular one, the ground and I think it's D minus, D positive, are in the right location. Good chance they're going to be the right pins to use. The other one that is referenced in the Dragino manual is the A11 pin. There's no A11 on this one. So you can do what I would do, which is just start poking around. It's quite likely that TX2 Plus because of its location. So if you don't want to wait for one to come out of Dragino and you want something quick and easy, next day Amazon, by all means, give it a try. There's nothing in here. It's all low voltage data stuff. You can't blow things up. Nothing's going to, let out the magic smoke. So feel free to grab one of those and trial and error if you want. In the documentation from Dragino, there's this AT command connection FAQ. We're going to jump down here, and lo and behold, there's a picture of that board. Secret, that's not the right picture. The pinout's not right. But regardless, they do give you the pinout here, and this is where I was talking about that A11 pin. It's the receive pin on the device, so if you don't get a response when you type in the password 123456, which is the default password on all Draginos, I think most manufacturers have done that. I don't know why. It'll respond or it won't respond, in which case, try another pin. The other thing you're going to find as you're playing around with different devices is when you are working with putty. So let me back up a step. How do you connect your computer to your adapter? If you're on Windows, grab putty. If you're on Mac, grab a serial tool. I'll include a link to both of those. Um, the communication settings on them are usually identical, as in there is a baud rate, a bit, and a I'm drawing a blank. 8N1, 8-bit, no parity, one stop bit. Um, that's almost universal on everything. What differs will be the speed, and you'll know you get the wrong speed when you're getting weird characters displayed in your terminal. So double check your port speed. In these, make sure I got the right one here. The LHT65Ns, it's 9600 baud. So I'm going to jump into one. I'm going to show you what you can do there and why it's important to have this set up. However, I did mention you end up with a whole bunch of adapters and a whole bunch of connectors. So this is a Dragino LDS1 door switch. First point of diagnostic on this one, really simple. Does the LED go on and off when you try to activate it? If not, chances are you get a low battery. I'm about to spam my phone with a bunch of text messages. Batteries are usually the first thing to go on these. Always have some spare batteries around so that you can swap them out. If you want to hook one of these up to your TTL adapter, you're going to need a little thing like this. It's just a lower density connector on these things. If you bend the pins over, yes, you can get some DuPont pins on there. Why bother? You can grab one of these on Amazon as well. It's not going to be labeled for what you're trying to do. Make sure you have your multimeter handy so you can get the right pinouts. And then just slide that on there. And now I've got DuPont friendly sized pins that I can connect. Interesting little hack. The top two pins, if you were to hold the switch this way, so with the reed switch at the top, those top two pins, positive and ground. So if you want to throw a bigger battery, that's how you would do that. So look for status indicators, pulses, heartbeats, signs of life. Make sure that you're not working with a dead battery. Multimeter it. Get the adapters that you need for the devices. If you're going to work with multiple devices, chances are, and multiple manufacturers, chances are you're going to end up with a whole bunch of different things that connect. Your collection is going to grow. You can either embrace it or you can narrow down your field of devices you choose to use. The other devices you're going to find out there and going to be covered in the documentation are, especially for the Draginos, these ST-Link V2s. Now, I hold this one up as a joke. This will not work. You will find hundreds of these available. Amazon's got them from every vendor. They don't work on the Draginos. They may work on other platforms. Any of the, STM8s, I think. Well, let's see what it says. Look at that, STM8 and STM32s. They don't work on Draginos. Save your money. Don't buy one of those. Unless you have somebody, whether it's Travis or somebody on Discord who says, yes, this link, download or buy from Amazon will work. The problem is there's so many clones out there. This is an official ST-Link V2 adapter. You will not find these for sale with a realistic shipping date. I forget which website somebody said, oh yeah, they're available on there. And I said, no, 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 look carefully. When stock availability occurs in 2023, which, in case you're watching this in 2023, is a year from now. So, again, I work with Dragino a lot. I was able to get them to grab one and throw it in a shipment for me. So, you are going to have a growing collection of adapters. Just embrace it. Figure out a way to sort them, organize them, remember who's whose. Adapters for sensors. We've talked about the cables for the Draginos, the USB-Cs. Another great implementation of this. This is another Dragino, the LTC2. Comes in about 3 or 4 different flavors. In case you can't see it, I'll try to get it on an angle here. There's a header block right there. And that's your pinouts. And I think it's ground, transmit, receive, the bottom 3. So DuPont cable, plug them in, plug the other end into your AT adapter, and you're in diagnostics. Yeah, can't emphasize enough, make sure you got some DuPont cables around. I actually started putting together kits so that they were just ready to go. Oh, I'm going to work on a LHT52, again, USB-C connector. Then I've got the adapter and the cables ready to go, just connected to my AT adapter. All right. We've covered the tools, the things you want to have. The other is a link to the documentation. Dragino's got, I hope Betty doesn't watch this, she's going to yell at me, has got a mess for their documentation. Some of the products have links to directly to PDFs, some have links to pages that then send you to the wiki. So I have learned to just start going to the wiki and work that way. That's a little inside tip, one Dragino user to another. So we've got a TTL adapter. We've DuPont cabled, connected it to our adapter, and we connect our sensor. We fired up putty. Oh, sorry. I'm an old IT guy. I hate Windows. I use it for work. I use everything. I use Mac for everything else. I just happen to like the OBS Studio, so I do this on my work computer. Shh, don't tell them. So once we've connected the TTL adapter to Windows, you need to figure out what serial port is it actually connected to. So if you're on Windows 10, you're going to open up your little settings tab, and you're going to look for that Silicon Labs CP210. Now, you'll notice I have 2 of them. I happen to have another interesting little device that uses the same brain as the TTL adapter. So all you need to do is just unplug it, see which one disappears. If you happen to have 2, and plug it back in, figure out what COM port that is. Now, you're going to go into PuTTY, you're going to create a new session, you're going to do serial, you're going to do COM4, you're going to do okay, there we go. You're going to do COM4, you're going to do the right baud rate for the device you got, you're going to do 8N1. You may or may not need to force local echo. Some devices will automatically sense that it needs to echo your command back so that you can see what you're typing. Others, you got to force it. Little tips, trial and error, you'll figure it out. So, as you can see, the messages popping up here, connected to my LHT65N. There are a number of commands that people usually want to jump to when trying to configure their device. The first is how frequently does it send packet data. So especially on these, that's referred to as the TDC. And there's two ways of doing that. You can do that through a downlink. There's another video on the proper way to downlink. So please make sure you watch that if you're trying to do a downlink command to the Dragino devices. The other is, as we're doing right now, connecting to it on the serial port and doing a AT command to set that value. The thing to note here is when you're working in terminal, the time measurement isn't always the same as when you're doing downlink. So when you're doing downlink, you're going to turn around and say, I want you to send it every 1200 seconds. When you're doing it in terminal, you are going to tell it in milliseconds. Please check your documentation on that. I haven't seen too many people, but I have seen a few set the wrong time interval, and next thing you know, the thing's just firing constantly. But the thing that I want to show you is the config. So most devices will time out after a few minutes of inactivity, so you need to enter your password again. Another thing to make note of, the AT plus config in capitals and AT plus config in lowercase are not the same. If it's written in capitals, type it in capitals. It's not there for readability. So AT plus config. On this one, it's not config, it's CFG. AT plus CFG. So, what's one of the other common errors that people are running into? Well, chances are, I thought I left one handy here. Maybe it's on the table behind me. Yes. Okay. Chances are you bought it, it came in a box, and it had a sticker on it, and you typed those numbers into console. Because who puts the wrong sticker on a box? Sadly, it hasn't happened to me, but I do know it has happened. Sadly that it does happen. Not because it hasn't. Anyway, you get my point. Mistakes happen. Having the wrong sticker in the box should not be the end of your sensor endeavors. The AT config will give you your device EUI, your app EUI, and your app key. Then you can confirm that your EUI on the device, so in the case of the Draginos, they will put the device EUI on it. You go, oh, yes, that is the right one. It's rare that you get typos. It's usually just the wrong sticker. So some of the other guys will send you an Excel sheet. I'm sorry. It does happen. The community is trying to come up with an easy way for onboarding. Until that happens, we're still stuck with keys. So the network security key, which is this 100, that is not applicable for helium, so disregard that one. You know what? I'm just going to randomly pick a couple of the config values here. They're all documented in that in the wiki. So ADR, you should have seen this before in console, adaptive data rate, meaning a stationary device will determine how to transmit to the hotspot in order to be heard. That's called the spreading factor. You want to make sure that you are being as efficient as possible, that your device is getting the most battery life it possibly can. That doesn't mean that every time it tries to transmit, it transmits at full power. So sometimes you may want to turn adaptive data rate off to make sure that it's able to communicate consistently. TXP equals 0, transmit power. DR, data rate. Here are a couple that I know some people have struggled with. So, let's do it this way. Okay, so JN1DL and JN2DL. This is the join delay. How long should it wait to get confirmation that the join was successful? If you're having issues, maybe you want to try increasing these values. Remember, try to bring them back to normal when you're done. Another note, and I know this is time relevant, within the last week we've identified a few things regarding the router and devices joining and the hotspots and communicating with router, and we're streamlining that communication path. A lot of the issues that some people have been having should go away. I say, some people have been having because I can't truly say I've had the same level of complexity that some people have been having. I have had the occasional device be a real pain in the ass trying to join. Sometimes it's something as stupid as how long did I hold the reset button? If I hold the reset button on this thing for 2 seconds, I can put it into a join loop. If I hold it for 3 or more seconds, it joins properly. There's nothing time sensitive about the activation of this button. It just seems to be that way. Network join mode. This is the OTA functionality. So we're running an OTA network, so make sure you're using OTA join method. The network ID there is actually the Helium network ID because this device is joined to the network. Again, Class A. We're only running Class A devices currently. We'll see what the future brings in regards to that. Scrolling down a little further, we're into VER. If you haven't guessed, that's version. So this is a newer. I got too many sensors on my desk. This is a newer 65N. It is a US 915 frequency. It is firmware version 1.0. There currently is only firmware version 1.0. You sort of get the idea here, right? There's my TDC, right? If I haven't seen a data packet in a while, and I wonder if there's something wrong with my device. Double check that. I'm not on the development team for Helium. Like as I said earlier, I do work in the software development field. I get very defensive when people want to jump to, oh, console's broken, my device isn't sending data anymore. Lo and behold, you got it set for a 2-day, upload interval. So please take some time, do some diagnostics, make sure you have covered the bases. The other things here, AT port. If you haven't figured this out, and I know in my first video I talked about the port setting in console and said, well, all I do is leave it as it is and it works. The more I've started to play with some other devices, especially these LHT52s, application port. It's almost like having multiple applications running on a single device, and in order to tell the difference between them, they use different ports. Or if you're lucky enough to have figured out how these work, sometimes they'll send 2 different messages on the same port. We'll save that problem for another day. Again, there's my battery level, 3007. That is not millivolts. So the other thing that you might want to look for is timestamp. Make sure if it has joined the network, this is important, that it has the timestamp, accurate timestamp. When a device joins the network, the first thing it says is, what time is it? You can see that in the console as a, with the gear, anyway, Mac command, yes. It's important that the devices have a reference of time to each other. In case you haven't figured this out, the LHT65Ns are also a data logger, as in if you enable acknowledgements on your uplinks and the sensor does not receive an acknowledgement after an uplink, it will take that data point and it'll store it in memory. I believe it's, I'm going to get this wrong, and again, Betty's going to get mad at me. I believe it's 6,000 data points. Might be 600. Anyway, it can hold a lot of data. The point being is if you're in an area where you've got, say, a mobile cold storage vehicle, and it often will go from town to town, but maybe between towns the coverage isn't that great, it'll store those data points in between and can then download them once it returns to an area with coverage. I'm going to save that whole thing for a different video once I figure out how to exploit it for my uses. So I think I'm not going to go into each sensor, each device. That's really not the point I wanted to cover with this. But as I said, I did want to slow things down and talk about how I work through problems when they do arrive, because I do run into problems. I'm not going to lie to you. I just don't jump to the conclusion that, helium's broken, console's broken, etc. It is a ecosystem of collaboration. You're a sensor owner. Maybe you get a hotspot too. Maybe you don't. But you as a sensor owner, the hotspot is a hotspot, or somebody else is a hotspot owner. Whether you're running on Foundation's console, Nova's console, Disk 91's console, there's somebody else who's launching one, Tag.io, I think, is doing console service. We need to make sure that we're doing our due diligence on our own systems for making sure they're up to date, making sure they're connected, making sure they're working. So that's about everything I'm going to try to cram into this video right now. So get the right tools, links in the description below. Keep batteries on hand. DuPont connectors, even if you don't need to connect to silly little mag pin adapters. Yeah, let's wrap it there. That's probably good. I hope this has been useful. Like I said, I'm trying to help out, but often I'm biting my tongue to say I'm not having that problem with the network. Try your device. And I know that stings. I've been on that side of the conversation. So get yourself some tools, do some diagnostic, make sure your devices are working properly, and you should have relatively smooth sailing from here on out. Anyway, that's all for now. Catch you on the Discords. Good luck with your projects, and I'll see you later.